What is she going to paint the town red with? Who is this so-called block boy? Why is Lady Gaga going to kill Representative Miller?
For the past 15 months, I have committed myself to investigating the meaning behind the music we listen to. With careful care and thoughtful thought, I have worked tirelessly to reveal the secret political messages hidden in our popular music. I will now present my findings. First, I will rank the top 100 songs of 2023 politically. Second, I will put it all together to reveal the secret meaning of popular music.
Without further ado, let's get started and rank the top 100 songs of 2023 politically. Okay, I lied. One further ado. Since it would be anticlimactic to start with the worst one, I'm going to cover the lowest two tiers, 13 songs, from least bad to worst, before covering the rest of the list, from worst to best. Okay, let's go.
Don't ask questions, just believe it.
Establishment Tier. This is for the songs that support and uplift the corrupt, dominating forces in our society, and do so in a way that is thoroughly uninspired. Starting with number 88, favorite song, Tootsie.
I'm on the stage right now, singing your favorite song. Look in the crowd, even nowhere to be found as they sing along.
With lines about how the woman he's singing to hates herself, accompanied, naturally, by an offer to fix all her problems and bring her peace by being with him, favorite song reflects an all too common masculine savior complex that is as tiring as it is presumptuous. 89. Lift Me Up, Rihanna. In this one, Rihanna hopelessly calls out for an authority to This boot licks so hard, I'm surprised there's any tread left on the sole. 90. Religiously, Bailey Zimmerman.
I went looking at pictures I didn't want to see.
The figures Bailey's referencing revealed some socio-cultural trends that he's evidently not too happy with. Lower marriage rates,
Thought I'd marry you.
and, of course, declining religiosity.
'Cause I don't have the only woman who believed in me religiously.
Usually this sort of rhetoric wouldn't play so low, but
And this don't even feel like life.
really? Get with the times, Grandpa. 91. Wait for You. Future, featuring Drake and Thames.
Yeah. I've been trapping around the world.
Yes, there definitely were worse colonial efforts than the French-Canadian voyagers, but
You got better when you met me, and that ain't coincidental. Tried to bring the best out you, guess I'm not that influential.
cultural imperialism, really not the best look in this millennium. 92. What It Is, parentheses, Block Boy. Doechii, featuring Kodak Black.
What it is, ho, what's up? Every good girl needs a little thug. Every block boy needs a little love.
Rising star Doechii teams up with tumbling trapezoid Kodak Black to praise someone who is resolute
Never switch your side.
and gets things stuck.
He get it up, pocket stuck.
Who is this so-called block boy? Well, it's none other than football man and senior senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, the boy who single-handedly blocked over 450 military nominations and promotions over the course of 10 months last year to protest the Defense Department's abortion policy. Eventually, Democrats got enough frustrated Republicans on board to credibly get around the block boy, so Tuberville let up and allowed almost all the positions to be filled, and they were, in block and unanimously.
Every block boy needs a little love.
This block boy might need a little love, but he certainly doesn't deserve any. 93. I'm Good, parentheses, Blue. David Guetta and BB Rexa.
I'm good, don't you know I'm good?
Classic Democrat virtue signaling. 94. Love You Anyway. Luke Combs. Love You Anyway is about promising to love someone, despite anything they might do. A clear reference to the US's policy of unconditional support for the State of Israel. Beyond pragmatically accepting the flaws of a morally ambiguous ally, he reveled in its transgressions. Is Israel betraying American values like freedom and democracy?
If you turned your back on me and walked away, not a thing about the way I feel would change.
Is it committing war crimes?
And if your touch shattered me like glass, I'd be in pieces trying to make the breaking last.
Is its actions causing division and violence here?
Even if I knew the day we met you'd be the reason this heart breaks, oh, I don't love you anyway.
He doesn't care. He'd love it anyway. 95. 7. Jungkook featuring Lotto. Last year, the South Korean government proposed expanding working hours in their already overworked country from 52 hours to 69 hours for a 6-day work week. Here's where Jungkook chimes in.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 7 days a week.
That's right, it's not enough for him to voice his support for the policy in the face of a low birth rate-driven labor shortage. He has to double down and say, 6 days a week? No, I'll do 7. Anything for the tribal masters.
Every hour, every minute, every second, you know, night after night.
Thankfully, despite Jungkook's best propagandistic efforts, young South Koreans protested this oppressive anti-labor law, and it eventually failed.
And I'm forever smoking Nazis, I'ma pass the blunts to Anne Frank, the same ones.
Now we have the worst of the worst. Those songs with messages so vile as to be deserving of this most derogatory political label. Fascist. In a banner year for American fascism, we have 5 songs in this category. Starting with 96. Chemical. Post Malone. In this ode to chemical weapons, Post defends using them in response to other forms of aggression, in direct violation of the 1993 Chemical Weapons Convention. He knows any promises not to use them again mean nothing. And he'll recognize they're wrong. He'll apologize and pretend to try to do better. But will he stop using them? Tragic. 97. Bebe Dame. Fuerza Regida and Grupo Frontera.
Tengo tiempo pensando en los dos, si podemos arreglar la situación.
In this one, Payo Solis of Grupo Frontera and Jesus Paz of Fuerza Regida step into the role of Vladimir Putin, singing to Ukraine.
Lo nuestro es una guerra en el amor, defiendo lo que me pide el corazón.
Looking through the rest of the lyrics, there are threats of annexation,
Quiero comerte yo todos los días,
desires to reform the Soviet Empire,
tenerte de nuevo en mis fantasías.
mocking terms for so-called peace,
Lo que te pido, ven, dame. Tengo mil planes, propuestas para amar, tú y yo en la soledad.
Vlad is eager,
Yo aquí te espero, solo vente, vente, vente.
obsessive,
No sales de mi mente.
and he ends it with what is more of a warning than a threat.
Dime que sí, voy a tenerte.
Scary stuff. 98. Superhero, parentheses, heroes and villains. Metro Boomin, featuring Future and Chris Brown.
Yeah, drinking dope turned me to a superhero, yeah.
Needless to say, drinking dope is a metaphor for some motivating force that brings about this superhero. Thankfully, Future reveals exactly what he's talking about.
I'm on that dope again, I'm on that flow again, switch up the flow again, yeah. Fly down the parachute, gripping that pole again, I'm on that oil again, yeah.
Oh yeah, oil. The quote-unquote superhero that this song reveres is none other than the neo-imperialist United States in its never-ending quest for that oil. The military-industrial complex will get rich.
Nigga get rich, better take it to walk.
The politicians will get rich.
Get the stacking up, I'm untouchable. I get to represent money multiple.
The military will commit war crimes and cover it up.
Spraying of the crowd, take to the grave.
And of course, we know what it's all for.
Ain't no strong, but I'm still on all.
The US has amassed so much power as the supposed champion of democracy. But when it has a chance to use its power for good, it turns away. I bet you're expecting that they turn this on its head and end with a passionate anti-imperialist critique. Nope. They brush those criticisms off and have the gall to suggest that those who call for justice are the real evil. 99. Try that in a small town. Jason Aldean. Hey, city folk, you best not do crime here in this small town or disrespect authority. Just see what happens if you try. I yearn for the opportunity to commit socially acceptable acts of violence on strangers. I have a gun. I'm a man. Hey, city folk, don't take my gun away from me in this small town. It makes me feel like a man. Just see what happens if you try. Please, God, let me shoot somebody. Small town. Testosterone. Small town. I am afraid of urban areas. Now what could top that? You've probably noticed this, but I've been using the conventional, not technical definition of fascism for this tier. Sure, some of the songs here flirt with autocracy and nationalism, but for the most part, they just say things that I really don't like. But this last one, this can make Benny himself smile. 100. Paint the Town Red. Doja Cat.
Yeah, bitch, I said what I said. I'd rather be famous instead. I let all that get to my head. I don't care, I paint the town red.
Listen close. Do you hear that? No? Of course you don't. Because it's a dog whistle and you're a sheep. You sit there dead-eyed nodding along to the rhythm of the death knell of millions. Unbury your head from the sand and think. Think! What is she going to paint the town red with? Blood. Whose blood? Political dissidents? Racial and ethnic minorities? Perhaps.
Bitch, I said what I said.
But who exactly are these dogs that Doja Cat hates so much? You're starting to hear it now, aren't you? Because Doja Cat is coming. For you. I don't make serious accusations like this on the basis of her associations with far-right or neo-Nazi groups. In circumstances like this, it is critical to separate the art from the artist. But Doja Cat is rather blunt with her aspirations. She seeks glory.
I'd rather be famous instead.
She'll let the power consume her
I let all that get to my head.
and commit horrendous acts of violence.
I don't care, I paint the town red.
Doja Cat craves suffering.
Yeah, said my happiness is all of your misery.
She's built a cult of personality,
They just want my love and my energy.
who will blindly follow her.
And trust me, I have magical foresight.
She'll suppress freedoms of speech in the press,
You can't talk no shit without penalties.
praise her supporters and denigrate those who dare to resist,
Bands ain't dumb, but extremists are.
all while embracing a neo-fascist aesthetic.
Ugh, I look better with no hair.
None of this is hyperbole.
Yeah, give me the chance and I'll go there.
We can only hope our institutions are strong enough to survive her.
This is what losing hope might sound like.
Disaffected Tier. This is for the mistaken, the mishandled, the misinformed, and for songs that otherwise miss the mark. For the most part, these reflect a failure of society, rather than inflicting failure on it, so I don't hold too much against the artists here. Starting with 87, Super Freaky Girl, Nicki Minaj. Here, Nicki takes a positive rights approach to the Second Amendment, arguing for free AKs for all. Interesting idea, but I really can't see how this ends well. 86. Creepin', Metro Boomin featuring The Weeknd and 21 Savage.
I don't wanna know if you're playing me, keep it on the low.
If somebody is wrong The Weeknd, he doesn't want to be aware. Ignorance is bliss and all. In his verse, 21 Savage gets a little more specific with what sort of transgressions we're dealing with here.
How you go from housewife to a sneaky link?
In the dysfunctional marriage that is the United States Congress, the House's wife is, of course, the Senate. The incident 21 is referencing is specifically when serial bribe taker and New Jersey housewife, Reed Senator Bob Menendez, sneakily linked with senior Egyptian officials during his tenure as chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, leading to his being charged with conspiracy to act as a foreign agent in October of last year. The Egyptians bribed Bob with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and literal gold bars, helping him to live a life of luxury.
Got you riding around in all type of Benzes and Rolls. Girl, you used to ride in the rinky dink.
While the reality of the corruption and rot deep within our government may not be a comfortable one, I hope we can all agree that it is better that we address it and hold the guilty accountable, rather than just trying to ignore the problem.
And if you creepin', please don't let it show. Oh, baby, I don't wanna know.
85. Fuck You Mean. Gunna. Gunna is rich.
Trapping, I made me a killer. Giver's my only decision.
You are not. And you will never be.
Let's see how much you can earn.
Gunna ties all this together with a frankly baffling anti-equality message.
Can't be my equal, I don't know what you heard.
Come on, read the room. 84. Dancing in the Country. Tyler Hubbard. The big city might have an appealing luster, but it's stifling. Unlike in the evil big city, in the country, you can dance. You can wear boots. You can have freedom. '83. Unholy. Sam Smith and Kim Petras.
Dirty, dirty boy. You know everyone is talking on the scene. I hear them whispering about the places that you've been and how you don't know how to keep your business clean. Mom it up now, daddy's getting hot. At the body shop, doing something unholy.
Look, I'm not a fan of the guy either, but are we really going to spend this much time worrying about Hunter Biden? 82. Last Christmas. Wham.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away.
Discontentment with the current state of the organ donation system like this is what led to last year's Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network Act, which opened up a competitive bid for management of organ matching systems.
This year, to save me from tears, I'll give it to someone special.
Yes, privatization might be better than the status quo, but wouldn't the most special thing of all be to improve the system so that it runs efficiently and works without a profit motive? 81. Barbie World. Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice, featuring Aqua. In Barbie World, Nicki Minaj outlines the Federal Reserve's policies in response to the inflationary conditions of the past couple years.
Yelling out, we ain't selling out. We got money, but we ain't lending out. We got bars, but we ain't belling out.
Now, as we all know, the Fed would, in fact, start selling out Treasury bonds and open market operations to lower the money supply and raise interest rates. But signaling intentions and setting expectations is one of the Fed's most powerful tools in achieving its goal, here to cool down the economy and lower inflation, with the risk of a recession if they overreact. So if they yell out that they aren't selling out lots of bonds, even if they actually are, they can temper some of the effects, in the hope of achieving a soft landing. And by raising interest rates, fewer people will be able to get loans, slowing down the pace of economic growth and inflation. Even though the Federal Reserve has plenty of money, it won't again bail out large corporations like it did in previous recessions. Thus far, this is a pretty solid description of recent monetary policy. Then Ice Spice comes in with the critique. By calling all the Barbies bad, Ice Spice, I'm kidding, here's the real one. She's calling the Fed selfish and greedy, and through their desire for money, they would all of it. This predicts that the Fed's actions could cause an economic crisis like the one in Greece, a nation famous for its olives. There are definitely valid critiques to be made of US monetary policy, but I think this attempt unfortunately lacks a lot of the nuance that we have all come to expect. 80. One thing at a time. Morgan Wallen. Morgan Wallen has some problems. His lady left him, and he's struggling to cope.
If you ain't gonna kiss me, then I'll take some whiskey, some grizzly, nicotine, amphetamines too.
Meth? My goodness, you wouldn't want him to do that, would you?
You want me to start some of that, or you want me to stop loving you? Hey, what you want me to do?
Now it's your choice.
I hate to tell you, girl, but I'm only quitting one thing at a time.
It is this sort of whataboutism that works to prevent anything from improving. 79. Lavender Haze. Taylor Swift. You already know Taylor Swift does not care about climate change. But did you know she also doesn't care about pollution? Of course, she's been told about the problem, but she thinks caring about it won't do any good. She doesn't have the sort of can-do attitude that she characterizes as optimism from a bygone era. Inaction is comfortable, and here it unfortunately morphs into a sort of appreciation. '78. Golden Hour. Jake.
I was all alone with the love of my life. She's got glitter for skin, my radiant beat in the night. I don't need no light to see you shine.
She's useful even in the dark. And by dark, I mean dark web. The woman he's talking about here is a metaphor for Bitcoin. In response to environmental criticisms, he says it can be produced in less environmentally damaging ways.
She got solar power.
And he's certain the gravy train will keep on rolling. 77. I Like You, parentheses, a happier song. Post Malone featuring Doja Cat. PCH refers to the Pacific Coast Highway, a portion of California's State Route 1 in Southern California. Post promised to speed so excessively here caused California's legislators to preemptively adopt Assembly Bill 645, which allows speed cameras to automatically fine drivers for exceeding the speed limit. With how fast Post is going, payday. 76. TQG. Karol G and Shakira. Saudi Arabia has been criticized by the Biden administration over human rights concerns. And now that the US once again needs help in the Middle East and on oil issues, the Saudis are relishing their chance for revenge. They've aligned themselves with Russia and China, very profitable moves. Even after all we've been through, the good, the bad, the Khashoggi, the Saudis are willing to throw our relationship away like it was nothing. '75. La Bebe. Young Lucas and Peso Pluma. At first glance, this song is about the joys of fatherhood. At second glance, This song is racist. At third glance, however, intriguing. 74. Dance the Night, Dua Lipa. In Barbie, this is the song that represents the dogmatic slumber from which Barbie wakes. I do see how one could come to that conclusion, but I think this song's equating of diamonds and tears. Well, if this isn't about the De Beers Corporation, I don't know what. 73. Cruel Summer, Taylor Swift. Cruel Summer has long been a fan favorite from Taylor Swift's Lover album, leading to speculation as to why it wasn't pushed as a late album cycle single in 2020, only being promoted last year after newfound virality. Thinking back to the climate around that time, I might have a good idea why. And it's ooh, whoa, oh, it really was a cruel summer. 72. Made You Look, Meghan Trainor. Made You Look is a commentary on the sort of shock politics that have had such an impact on the political landscape in the last couple years.
But even with nothing on, bet I made you look. I made you look.
While Meghan's addressing a valid issue, I think writing these sorts of politicians off as just doing it for the attention, to some degree diminishes the real harm that they can do. 71. Berserk Music Sessions, Volume 53, Bizarrap, and Shakira. In 2021, after years of investigation, a Spanish judge announced that Shakira was on the hook for 6 counts of tax fraud, having avoided paying 14.5 million euros in income taxes. For her crimes, prosecutors were seeking 23 million in fines and 8 years in prison. Here's what she had to say. In the 11th hour, she negotiated a settlement of 7.5 million and no jail time, without admitting her guilt to the public, showing how the wealthy are not only able to avoid consequences for their illegal actions, but they can even come out on the other side stronger. 70. I Wrote the Book, Morgan Wallen. Biblical scholars have long debated the controversial question of who exactly wrote the most important book in human history. Prolific author Morgan Wallen makes his contribution to the discourse. Thanks, Morgan. 69. What My World Spins Around, Jordan Davis.
Watching you watch the sun going down, that's what my world spins around. You're what my world spins around.
68. Calm Down, Rema and Selena Gomez. Amateur diplomats Rema and Selena Gomez try to provide a solution to the various conflicts that are going on.
Baby, calm down, calm down.
It's so simple.
Baby, show me you can calm down, calm down.
Now you might be saying that this is an overly simplistic suggestion, or that many of these struggles are necessary. But have you heard their counterargument? 67. Thank God, Kane Brown featuring Caitlin Brown. Kane Brown's wife Caitlin really helped him out.
I was lost, you found a way to bring me back. Needed forgiveness, you always gave me that.
Caitlin Brown's husband Kane really improved her life.
Never thought I'd find an angel undercover. Made a change to everything from my heart to my last name.
And to whom do they give credit?
I thank God, thank God, thank God, yeah, thank God, thank God.
66. Flowers, Miley Cyrus. In this economy? 'Centrist Tier. Welcome to the Overton window. For the most part, these are pretty straightforward, so let's blast through them. Starting with 65. Unx 102. Grupo Frontera, and Bad Bunny. Now I took a couple years of Spanish in high school, so let's see if we can parse this one out. Un, that's one. X means by, like a 2x4, so por. And 100 is cien. So we have 1%. It's a little coded, but I think they're trying to make a song about the 1% tier. This gesture is in the direction of a point, but I really can't make heads or tails of the rest of it. They sound sad, I guess. Maybe that's it. 64. As It Was. Harry Styles. Just a little small C conservative whining. Not unlike 63. A Holly Jolly Christmas. Burr Lives.
Have a holly jolly Christmas, and when you walk down the street, say hello to friends you know, and everyone you meet.
These donkeys, why don't they get their heads out of their goddamn phones and say hello to someone? You know, in real life, none of that Instagram, Snapchat nonsense. 62. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. Brenda Lee. In classic centrist fashion, this one tries to both sides the war on Christmas. 61. Jingle Bell Rock. Bobby Helms.
Jingle bell time is a swell time.
This one at least picks a side, refusing to use the Christ word at all, euphemistically calling the season Jingle Bell Time. Creative, I can't deny that. 60. Wild as Her. Corey Kent. She's wild, chaotic, unconstrained by the laws of man and nature. She's vaguely non-traditional.
She never wanted to be wild picket fenced in. She ain't living for a diamond ring.
59. Snooze. SZA.
I searched that file for you. I do that 3-4 times again. I testify for you.
SZA will do a lot for this person.
My being scheming, looting, hide your bodies.
She'll go as far as committing crimes for them. This begs the question, who is she talking about?
I can't lose when I'm with you. How can I snooze and miss the moment? You just too boy.
SZA can't snooze when she's with them. Oh God. Oh no, does that mean no, not again, it can't be. The woke! 58. Ain't That Some? Morgan Wallen.
My true north is due south, the blue course going down, just like that setting sun on my OZ71.
Truck. Beer. Party. Country.
I know it's cliche to sing Chevrolets, cold beers and Fridays, but that's just the way it is out here.
Hey, that's what I said.
Ain't that some COUNTRY? Shit we've been doing since we was J-High.
Just some good old Southern pride. Nothing more. Less.
Ain't that some shit?
57. Princess Diana. Ice Spice and Nicki Minaj.
New York, stand the fuck up. When we come out, it look like Princess Diana on the street.
On August 31st, 1997, Princess Diana died in a car crash in Paris while driving away from paparazzi.
If he's smart, he gon' act like a fan.
Look, I'm all for mocking the death of a royal, but let's get some fresh material, why don't we? 56. All I Want for Christmas Is You. Mariah Carey. A rather conventional anti-capitalist message, with perhaps a rather unconventional hyper-capitalist undertone. 55. Need a Favor. Jelly Roll.
I owe you more than one, and beggars can't be choosers. But I'll pay for all I've done, just please don't let me lose.
Jelly has already amassed a lot of debt, but he's desperate not to lose. Mr. Roll really needs the help. This is clearly an allegory, where Jelly Roll is Ukraine and God is Joe Biden. 54. Vampire. Olivia Rodrigo. Look, Olivia, I know they're complicated,
Bleeding me dry like a goddamn vampire.
but we all gotta do our taxes. 53. Next thing you know, Jordan Davis. In under 3 minutes, Jordan Davis goes through the better part of a lifetime. Meeting someone, getting married, having kids, raising them, having grandkids, seeing them.
Tell them stories every chance you get about how fast this life down here can go. Next thing you know.
A sweet tale to emphasize the fast pace of a life well lived. Or, perhaps, evidence of the relativistic shifts caused by a geocentric. 52. Karma. Taylor Swift featuring Ice Spice. In this one, Taylor Swift and Ice Spice declare that karma is, and so on. You might say, no, karma isn't those things. Karma is a conception of action and consequence found in several Indic religions. Cultural appropriation. As Taylor puts it, turns out it's you critics who are underinformed. Swift and Spice are using a very technical definition of karma here, referring to karmic dirt, the substance that, like the humble neutrino, pervades all space in great abundance while being almost imperceptible. Thus everything, material or not, is, in fact, karma. 51. Die For You. The Weeknd and Ariana Grande. The people of the United States of America have a pretty complicated relationship with their military. On one hand, we have significant ethical reservations about how it uses its power to benefit the United States government.
You hate that you want me, hate it when you cry.
Yet, deep down, we'll always have a soft spot for them.
I just can't say I don't love you, 'cause I love you.
Is this military propaganda? Probably, but it's got enough truth and nuance in it to get it this far. 50. Cupid. 50-50. Have you been stuck between a couple of options you just don't like? Have you been waiting since the election for something better to come along? 50-50. A centrist political collective agrees. Here, Cupid refers to the co-chair of the centrist Forward Party, Andrew Yang, nicknamed thusly for his cherubim looks. Alas, they had a rude awakening upon seeing how the current two-party system works to unfairly prevent centrists from winning. 49. Wait in the Truck. Party. Featuring Lainey Wilson.
She was bruised and broke from head to toe with a tear in her bloodstained shirt. She didn't tell the whole truth, but she didn't have to. I knew what had happened to her.
Wait in the Truck tells the story of a man who comes across a woman who had been a victim of domestic violence before killing her abuser.
Well, I knocked and no one came, so I kicked in his double-wide door. I let the hammer drop before he got to that 12 he was reaching for.
I know what you're thinking. Is this yet another violent vigilante macho savior fantasy?
Thank you.
I mean, yeah.
I didn't try to hide my pistol. I didn't even try to run. I just sat on the porch smoking one of his cigarettes and waited for the cops to come.
But like the chunks of fresh fruit throughout an ambrosia salad, there is some substance mixed in with the fluff. Of course, while it is mostly to look cool, Hardy's status as a moral agent is left ambiguous.
I don't know if he's an angel, 'cause angels don't do what he did.
Furthermore, Wait in the Truck actually has some pretty interesting commentary about the justice system.
I never thought my day of justice would come from a judge under sea.
The judge she is referring to here is a tourist judge, arguing that the authority of the state is not dissimilar to that of a weapon. In the final verse, when he is in prison for his crimes, Hardy also raises an interesting conception of the law as a structure of consequences rather than as an ethical guide.
It's been 60 months, and she still comes to see me from time to time. It was worth the price to see a brighter side of the girl I picked up that night.
As the saying goes, do the crime if you can do the time. 48. Memory Lane, Old Dominion.
If I could buy a house on memory lane, I'd put my money down and I'd sign my name.
Memory Lane represents a romanticized version of the past.
On that little corner lot where it don't ever rain, and we'd stay good as new, like a fresh coat of paint.
Of course, Old Dominion recognizes that the world that they so fondly remember never actually existed.
Oh, I'd be happily delusional.
Either that, or they think they're delusional to even imagine that they could own a home. 47. Where She Goes, Bad Bunny. In Where She Goes, an extended sexual metaphor references the intercourse of trade between the United States and China, wherein the breakdown of diplomatic relations can jeopardize the ability of the two economic juggernauts to compete in a healthy manner. 46. What Was I Made For? Billie Eilish.
Turns out I'm not real, just something you paid for. What was I made for?
Here, Billie comes to the harsh realization that her employer doesn't actually care about her. 45. Under the Influence, Chris Brown. In a cynical tale of corruption, Chris Brown here plays the role of a wealthy foreign actor courting a corrupt politician. Once they're under the influence of an adversarial foreign power, they lose much of their autonomy. And they are branded forever, unable to escape their corrupt dealings. 44. U-Proof, Morgan Wallen. U-Proof follows congressional Republicans' attempts to impeach Joe Biden. Unlike previous accusations leveled against the president made while they were in the minority, they actually need evidence to get an impeachment effort through now that they have power. And time again, they are thwarted, unable to find much of anything. They've looked far and wide, over the course of an 81-year lifetime, but they can't find any wrongdoing that'll help remove him from office.
No matter what time or 10, I can't get you gone.
43. Fast Car, Luke Combs. Much of the discourse surrounding Fast Car has centered around this line.
Still ain't got a job, so I work in the market as a checkout girl.
Checkout girl? But he boy. Listeners have come up with a couple of reasons to explain this line. Does it flow better? Is Luke Combs trans? Is grocery store worker such a gendered occupation that he cannot even fathom a male one? I can't really say. It is unfortunate that this line has overshadowed lyrics that otherwise tell a very compelling tale of self-empowerment in the face of cyclical poverty. Not sure why everyone else seems to be missing that. 42. Watermelon Moonshine, Lainey Wilson.
We threw a blanket neath the sunset. Being brave is 18 gifts. We gave each other more than our hearts. With the help of a mason jar. Drinking watermelon moonshine.
Watermelon Moonshine tells the story of a night of firsts, getting gone and getting some. A solid, albeit conventional, do crimes message. 41. Peaches and Eggplants, Young Nudie featuring 21 Savage. Once again, this song utilizes an extended sexual metaphor to represent the intercourse of trade, this time specifically trade related to the agricultural industry, a critical and heavily subsidized component of the US economy. Nudie also makes a point to emphasize how broad this industry is.
Shit with peaches, just like the fruit. She say that shit with fruit. I say that shit with goose.
Not only is agriculture fruit, it is also goose and other livestock. 40. Area codes, Cali.
I got hoes, might just be on it. different area codes.
Not only is this gender-swapped interpolation of Ludacris and Nate Dogg's 2001 song of the same name feminism, it also emphasizes the spatial contraction allowed by advancing technology, a major theme in contemporary cultural analysis. 39. Thought You Should Know, Morgan Wallen. No song better represents the constructive parts of the legislative zeitgeist in 2023, the least productive Congress since the Hoover administration, than Thought You Should Know. Most Americans have grown cynical, believing that Congress is so polarized that it can't or won't do anything productive. A perennial area of overlap between the two parties' platforms is increased transparency, and there's been a fair amount of legislation on that front. The Providing Accountability Through Transparency Act of 2023, in a brief, plain English summary about rule changes made by federal agencies. The COVID-19 Origin Act of 2023, what intelligence agencies have found out about where and how COVID started. If you're a pilot, the Notice to Air Emissions Improvement Act of 2023, about potentially hazardous conditions on your flight path. In a provision in the Defense Bill, some previously classified information about UFOs. 38. Boys a Liar Part 2. Pink Pantheress and Ice Spice.
Like that boy is a cat, saying he home but I know where he at. Don't like sneaky shit that you do.
37. Rich Men North of Richmond. Oliver Anthony music. When I did my review of this song last summer, there was one lyric I declined to cover. At the time, I thought I didn't have much to say about this, but I now realize my analysis was limited by what other people were saying about the song at the time. In this line, Oliver's saying he lives in the New World, meaning the Americas, with an old soul, correspondingly referring to the spirit of the old world social democracies of continental Europe. When he says, he's not complaining about taxes being too high. He's complaining that his dollar is taxed to no end, with no good purpose. He wishes tax revenue would go to meaningful ends, like they would in a European-style welfare state with strong social programs. This recontextualizes his critique of welfare policy, and it would abate the other issues he's referring to in the song: low wages, long hours, drug use, inequality, poverty, suicide rates, and so on. Now I know what you're thinking. Why is this song so low? As much as I'd like to put him higher, my hands are tied. Listen to what the man says in his vids.
You know, I'll say this. I sit pretty dead center down the aisle on politics. And always have.
He's not political. He's not right or left. Don't politicize him. He don't want that.
You know, it's the one thing that has bothered me is seeing people wrap politics up into this.
Why does everything have to have political overtones? It didn't used to be that way, you know? Why can't we just complain about our government as individuals without being labeled as pushing a narrative? Base tier. This is for the songs that are based. 36. Rich Flex. Drake and 21 Savage.
21, can you do something for me? 21. Can you hit a little rich flex for me?
Here, Drake asks 21 to hit a rich flex, a play on leftist sloganeering, insinuating that 21 will go on to beat the rich, and perhaps even eat them.
Put a nigga in the chicken wing.
35. Rock in a Hard Place. Bailey Zimmerman.
Between a rock and a hard place, red wine and mistakes.
Let's do a little triangulation. We're somewhere between a rock and a hard place. Now there are a number of hard places around the world, but let's see what tops the list. Okay, Yahoo Finance, that seems good. Many of the worst countries in the world are located in Africa, which gives credence to racists who believe that other races are inferior in intellect and hence unable to improve their situation. Okay, yeah, skip the analysis. Let's do that. Burkina Faso, Mali, Big Congo, Somalia, and, at number 1, Afghanistan. Checks out. This probably puts us in Iran, but let's double check that with the other clue. We're also between red wine, clearly referring to the wine-producing powerhouses of Italy, France, and Spain, and mistakes, correspondingly referring to the Tatmada's 2021 military coup d'etat and consequent civil war in Myanmar. Last year, Iran was at an inflection point, with fierce anti-government protests ignited by the death of Mahsa Amini at the hands of the theocratic state's morality police for improperly wearing a hijab.
Is this where it mends or it breaks between a rock and a hard place?
Unfortunately, it broke, or mended, I guess, whichever is the bad one, with the Khomeini regime violently suppressing the protests and preserving its power. 34. Shirt. SZA. In March of last year, Silicon Valley Bank experienced a bank run and subsequently failed after it unwisely bought long-term treasury bonds with billions in new deposits from the pandemic tech boom. This led to the collapse of a couple other mid-sized banks and swift intervention from the FDIC to try and stop a wider failure of the banking system. Although the government's efforts were ultimately successful, preventing depositors from losing anything, the optics of what seemed to critics like a bailout was a bad look for Biden. This is despite the fact that investors were made whole not through taxpayer money, but through the Bank Term Funding Program, which helped banks to access liquidity against their assets, stabilizing a situation where the status of billions of dollars of deposits was up in the air. 33. All My Life. Lil Durk, featuring J. Cole. In a political tour de force, Durk and Cole tackled a number of issues, big and lil, esoteric and germane. Police abusing their power.
Remember when cops are rats talking out my ass, boy, you ain't shit but a bitch with a bad.
Overcoming stereotyping in a troubled past.
I decided I had to finish, but the media called me a menace. I just said with the men politicians, I'm trying to change the image.
Trouble accessing firearms for people with a criminal history.
I know a felon who trying to get forward.
Lack of resources during youth, and the associated interactions with the carceral system.
Child support, your only support. For a visit, I'm going through courts. Went to jail, they was chaining me up.
The importance of pandemic programs.
See how you gon' joke about stimulus, but they really had came in the clutch.
Great stuff so far, and then we get to the chorus. Look, I get the point they're trying to make about the early onset of systemic injustices, but just from an arithmetic point of view, not sure if these are the right people to make it. All their life really isn't all that long. 32. Going, Going, Gone. Luke Combs. In Going, Going, Gone, Luke Combs points out some of the many things that have been commercialized in our society. Public transit, scarce water resources, natural phenomena, patriotism, entertainment, pharmaceuticals, and, of course, women. 31. Spin 'Bout You. Drake and 21 Savage.
Damn, just turned on the news and seen that man who never got pussy in school and making laws about what women could do.
A crowd-pleasing, if implicatively suspect point about abortion distracts but doesn't detract from a song that's otherwise about the revolution of the sun around the earth in a G7. 30. Bad Habit. Steve Lacy.
I bite my tongue, it's a bad habit. Kinda mad that I didn't take a step at it.
Bad Habit follows the reticence of major figures in the Democratic Party to challenge Joe Biden this primary cycle. With rising discontentment over his age, policy, age, economy, age, and age, many Democratic voters were hungry for alternatives.
wanted me. I wish I knew you wanted me.
Part of the problem was the absence of a clear alternative, with no potential candidate having the name recognition, broad appeal, and experience to receive media attention as the obvious replacement.
Thought you were too good for me, my dear. Never gave me time of day, my dear.
But major politicians stood back, hoping to avoid making the party look weak, and knowing that a primary challenge against a sitting president that ended any other way than victory would be career suicide. And as the months passed, and Biden won primary after primary, it became increasingly unlikely that any serious candidate would make a play. Is it too late? This question was asked with newfound urgency after Biden faltered at his first debate performance. Still, major leaders in the party were initially reluctant to openly make any calls for Joe to stumble down, with little more than sheepish obfuscations and strategic toe-in-the-water leaks to gauge public sentiments.
Would you mind if I tried to make a pass at it?
Weeks passed, and as Biden failed to recover in the public eye, and Donald Trump successfully recovered in the public ear, Joe realized he really ought to do what was best for the country and let someone else take the reins.
Now you're not too good for me, my dear. Funny you come back to me, my dear. It's okay, things happen for reasons that I can't ignore, yeah.
29. Thinking About Me, Morgan Wallen. In stark contrast to Bad Habit, Thinking About Me covers the Republican primary, which had a lot of competition even though it wasn't particularly competitive. Republican hopefuls engaged in a series of debates, unable to ignore the elephant that wasn't in the room.
Probably tell him we're a burnt out flame. Probably tell him that I ain't been on your mind. I ain't nothing but a long gone thing. You can cuss my name, but baby, don't you lie.
Although he didn't even participate, Donald Trump dominated the debates, just as he would go on to dominate the primary.
Every time you close your eyes, tell me who do you see? When you're tasting what he's drinking, are you thinking about me?
28. Nobody Gets Me, SZA. Many wondered why former Vice President Mike Pence would throw his fly in the ring for the nomination of a party whose opinion of him ranged from general indifference to frothing at the mouth and calling for blood. Obviously, there was no world in which he wins the nomination, much less the presidency or even vice presidency. If he wasn't thinking with his head, he must have been thinking with his heart.
Took a long vacation, no makeup, just Jay-Z. We're balls deep, now we beefing.
Though their relationship was imperfect, borderline abusive, Mike saw the nomination process as the only way to get some attention from his long-gone Don, in a Hail Mary to reconnect.
How am I supposed to tell you? I don't wanna see you with anyone but me. Nobody gets me like you.
Alas, it seems like Mike has come to understand that this dream is out of reach, consigning himself to a sad, empty existence.
Only like myself when I'm with you. Nobody gets me, you do.
27. Heart Like a Truck, Lainey Wilson. The advance of technological innovation has been faster than ever, leading to massive societal shifts that we have only begun to see. Lainey speaks to some of the anxiety that many workers are facing. Career seekers don't just have to think about their skills and aspirations. They have to consider whether or not their occupation will even exist in a decade. Many worry that technology like AI will outperform and overwhelm human labor, which is often sloppy and irregular. But Lainey has found a solution: to become one with the machine. 26. Por las noches, Peso Pluma. You're in the kitchen. It's 1 a.m., the lights are off, and your senses are heightened. Suddenly, the memories hit you, like Lainey Wilson's heart.
Cuando por las noches recordaba todo, el olor de aquel perfume sobre todo.
That hint of Ethelmer Captain in the air, the sweet scent of a now forbidden fruit.
Eres intocable como joya de oro.
All those meals you had here
Esas piernas largas comerme yo solo.
But were you ever really alone? With those big blue eyes staring back at you?
Y tus ojos grandes me perdí en un laberinto.
How dare they take this from you?
Y pensar que tú ya no vas a estar, pasará, solito me dejará.
What now? Electric? Induction? A mockery.
Tú te vas de mi vida. Como tú no hay nadie más. No hay nadie más.
25. Daylight. David Kushner.
There's darkness in the distance from the way that I've been living, but I know I can't resist it.
In 2022, the Senate passed the Sunshine Protection Act, which would have moved the U.S. to permanent daylight savings time. Yet it stalled in the House, not because of partisan gridlock or lobbying from Big Clock, but because we could not agree on whether to set the clocks forward all year or to follow the natural order.
Running from the daylight, oh I love it and I hate it at the same time.
24. Until I Found You. Steven Sanchez.
Georgia pulled me in, I asked to love her once again.
In Until I Found You, President Joe Biden serenades Georgia, the state which was critical to his electoral success in 2020 and could not be once again in November. If you haven't noticed already, most audio political meaning, and thus most of my analysis, is lyrical, but this song actually has something going on compositionally. Here, the 1950s-esque style of this blue-eyed soul tune is a reference to how old Biden is. And speaking of mortality in the Peach State, that brings us to 23. Bury Me in Georgia. Kane Brown.
But that's the place I wanna be after my last breath. Bury me in Georgia.
Here, Democratic strategist Kane Brown outlines the party's secret to their recent string of victories in Georgia. By moving elderly Democrats to the Atlanta suburbs, killing them, and then secretly sending in mail-in ballots on their behalf, the Georgian leftists have been able to tip the scales in their favor. 22. Eyes Closed. Ed Sheeran. Looking at the historic and spectacular nature of his failures, losing a hard-won speakership in a matter of months, and resigning from Congress before year's end, it can be easy to assume that no one in Congress actually liked Kevin McCarthy. But of course, there was a reason that his caucus chose him in the first place.
I pictured this year a little bit different when it hit February.
Once he won the speakership after a full 15 rounds of voting, McCarthy's amigos Tom and Guy were looking forward to finally seeing their buddy hold the reins. After rogue members of his caucus pulled the trigger on ousting him, the mood shifted. Kevin's pals, French Hill and Garrett Graves, knew that the intra-party instability would improve the Democrats' electoral prospects in 2024.
I could just pretend the colors are more than blue.
But they were also personally sad to see their homeboy leave.
But I lost more than my friend. I can't help but missing you.
But no one was more affected than the speaker's bestie, Patrick.
Delusion is here again, and I think you'll come home soon.
To Representative McHenry, the house is hardly a home without Kevin, and he can't bear to see those hallowed halls without being reminded of what he lost.
I'm here alone, just dancing with my eyes closed. 'Cause everywhere I look, I still see you. Time is moving.
21. Dial Drunk. Noah Kahan featuring Post Malone. Dial Drunk tells the story of New England native Noah Kahan's run-in with the police after being arrested for drunk driving. Noah shares his strategy for surviving an encounter with law enforcement. He freely consents to a search. He appeals to the officer's likely fondness for evangelical nationalism and police worship. Through these efforts, he masterfully gains the trust and sympathy of the officers, who instinctively take his side when he's unsuccessfully trying to reconnect with his ex-girlfriend. Now, of course, not everyone can pull off this strategy with equal results, and not all interactions with the police end well. 20. Cuff It, Beyonce. Beyonce here tells the other side of the story, detailing the intentions of the police. To ruin the lives of others. Following their training, cops will cause serious injuries, often fatal ones, and they will take no accountability for their actions. 19. PRC, Peso Pluma and Nathaniel Cano. Now for some international music. PRC tells a story from the People's Republic of China. Here, Peso Pluma speaks from the perspective of a CCP-backed manufacturer, selling to foreign markets. The products he sells are made in dangerous conditions and with dubious materials, but he knows that the shopper's high customers feel will assuage any reservations they have. And despite occasional complaints, business is booming, with consumers buying more and more. Amidst all this, Nathaniel Cano represents the workers, seeing the economic benefits of this opportunity, but being careful not to say too much beneath the watchful eye of the CCP. 18. Meltdown, Travis Scott featuring Drake.
Man, fuck all that spinning the narrative shit. I melt down the chains that I bought from your boss. Give a fuck about all of that heritage shit.
Drake sharply calls out how lost cause narratives and their corporate backers try to excuse the obviously racist and evil motivations behind the Confederacy under the guise of heritage to construct a politically useful culture war issue. Drake also criticizes revisionists' attempts to rehabilitate the Confederacy's image,
Don't come to the boy about repairing some shit.
rewriting its legacy as a sympathetic actor in American history.
Don't come to the boy about sparing some shit.
These ideas have taken root within the modern conservative movement, leading the Florida State Board of Education to include the following in its guidelines for teaching children about slavery. Quote,
Instructions includes how slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit.
End quote. Travis Scott's response.
Is you fucking crazy? Is you fucking crazy?
Yeah, seems about right. He continues,
And they scared of the 7.
referring to the attempts to vilify the radical abolitionist John Brown and his backers, the Secret Six.
After 1-3, then we turn up 11. Keep the shit open like 7-Eleven.
1-3, referring to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, set the U.S. on the path to turn up freedom and democracy to 11, though, like the convenience chain 7-Eleven, this remains an open issue. What are we even doing here? Is this the death of art? To tear every little thing into pieces until we find somewhere in the bloody scraps some suggestion of political meaning to latch onto like a leech, draining it till there's nothing left but the decomposing husk of what once was. Well, that's what 17, Everything I Love, Morgan Wallen, thinks.
Can't you see what you're doing, girl? You know damn near everything I love.
16, Last Night, Morgan Wallen. Here it is, the song of the year. What exactly does the soundtrack to 2023 say? Last Night isn't monumental. It's not anthemic. It doesn't ask us to consider grand narratives or to make historic changes. All it asks us to do is to think about last night.
Last night we let the liquor talk. I can't remember everything we said, but we said it all.
Let's try to remember what happened. Last Night released on January 31st, 2023, making last night the preceding Monday. Last night, millions of Americans agonized over the details of the torture and murder of Tyree Nichols at the hands of unhinged police. Last night, millions more were worried about a government shutdown caused by partisan politicians perpetually unable to compromise. Last night, prosecutors put forth evidence concerning the crimes of former President Donald Trump. Last night, dozens were killed by the Taliban in a suicide bombing in Pakistan. Last night was not a night like no other. It was a night like so many others, and so many more to come.
Baby, baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. No way it was our last night.
15. Players. Coi Leray.
Cause girls is players too. Bitches getting money all around the world, cause girls is players too.
In Players, Coi Leray provides a Marxist critique of global corporate feminism.
What you know about living on the top? Penthouse suites looking down on the ops.
This ideology encourages women to become a part of the oppressor class, looking down on the ops, read the proletariat, rather than joining what should be an intersectional revolution of oppressed classes and genders.
If you broke, then you gotta let him go. You could have anybody, any money, mo. Cause when you a boss, you could do what you want.
Here, by using the replaceability of the worker in modern industrialized economies to ruthlessly fire her struggling employees, Coi Leray revealed the inevitable destruction of human dignity that comes with the accumulation of capital in hierarchical structures of corporate power. 14. I Remember Everything. Zach Bryan, featuring Casey Musgraves. When I covered this song last September, alas, he is still affected.
I wish I didn't, but I do. Remember every moment.
And he'll never forget.
I remember everything.
Some of you were skeptical of my interpretation. I'll take this opportunity to spell things out for the less comprehensionally inclined amongst you.
I remind you of your daddy in his 88 Ford.
This is a reference to how George W. Bush started the Iraq War amidst post-9/11 tensions in order to complete the legacy of his daddy, George H.W. Bush, who was elected in 1988 and oversaw the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein.
Blame it on the beach, grown men don't cry.
What does the beach have? Sand. What else has a lot of sand? That's right, the Middle East. Americans, shook by national tragedy, put the blame on an entire region, race, and religion, and started several decades-long conflicts instead of taking the chance to express their feelings in a more productive way. 13. Ella Baila Sola, Eslabon Armado, and Peso Pluma. It's not often that popular music breaks out of its bubble and makes its way into the mainstream news media as a cultural phenomenon. The quintessential example of this was the explosion in popularity of United Kingdom-based acts like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Herman's Hermits during what came to be known as the British Invasion. Last year saw a similarly historic surge in popularity of regional Mexican musical acts, leading the media to dub this musical phenomenon as the Mexican Invasion.
They're just streaming across. This is a flat-out invasion.
You have a group of people that are invading the U.S. border.
That's an invasion.
It is an invasion.
This is an invasion. It's terrifying.
And I'm going to call it an invasion, like it or not.
With clear parallels to Beatlemania, the cultural dominance of bands such as Grupo Frontera, or Border Group in English, was sensationalized by the media, especially pop culture-centered networks like Fox News, as the Border Crisis, a catchy moniker for even catchier tunes. Former President Trump even got in on the action.
I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
Likening these groups to English rock band The Animals. Ella Baila Sola is not here just for its place as the biggest song of the invasion. It also cleverly plays on the double meaning of a quote-unquote Mexican invasion. As if there were actual concerns of a literal invasion at the border, Peso jokes that he would conquer the families of his American victims and take over the cultural and genetic heritage of this nation, as if anyone could ever think something so patently absurd. 12. Tennessee Orange, Megan Maroney.
Mama, I'm
Won't you tell Daddy he'll blow a fuse? Don't worry, I'm doing okay.
Inspired by the 2011 blockbuster Romeo and Juliet, Tennessee Orange tells a tale of forbidden love. Megan's love is from Tennessee, and she's from Georgia. You're probably wondering why this is such a big deal. The mainstream media would have you believe that this song is about an interstate college football rivalry between the Tennessee Volunteers and the Georgia Bulldogs. With Tennessee Orange referring to the team's signature color, but come on, do you really buy that? Being with a Tennessean is a moral failing. This isn't about some cute rivalry, it's about right and wrong. What's really going on? Let's investigate. Let's see. Blue eyes, door, cry, blue eyes, something blue, easy, door, a little bit harder. Remember the Bulldogs earlier? This references the Packers, which brings us to Green Bay. But we already figured out the color. No worries, when one door closes, another door. Peninsula. So it's something around the door peninsula. Cry, tears, water. But no, he doesn't make her cry. No cry, no tears, say it with me. No water. It's all so clear now. On June 1st, 1796, Congress declared the 35th parallel to be the southern border of Tennessee. A couple decades later, when Georgia and Tennessee sent out surveyors to define the border, they made a pivotal error and placed it about a mile south of the 35th. No one really cared for a while, but as the Atlanta metro grew and its residents grew thirstier, all eyes turned to Tennessee. And, looking at the region, the Tennessee is the only significant source of legally ambiguous freshwater in northwest Georgia. I see. Why? In the 1960s, the Tennessee Valley Authority constructed the Nickajack Dam, creating Lake Nickajack, extending the Tennessee River's footprint solidly below the 35th parallel. Absolutely parched and fiending for a drink, Georgia lawmakers tried several times to make a claim to some or all of the 50-odd square mile area that they were originally entitled to, each time to no avail. As the years passed, Georgians saw their desiccation turn to desperation. Tensions came to a breaking point in 2011.
So now, Georgians want to tap into Lake Nickajack, just yards over the border. To back up their claim, lawyer Brad Carver has come armed with a club, a golf club.
And with that, the first shot was fired. War has raged ever since. Orange isn't just the color of the Volunteers. It's the opposite of blue, mocking Georgia's lack of water. When Megan says, she's not referencing a jersey color. She's referring to the Georgian guerrilla forces who, following the advice of Georgia's Project Wet, decided they were getting that water one way or another. But of course, there's only one thing that can overcome regional resource conflicts. True love. 11. Kill Bill. SZA. I mean, I get it. In the words of legendary journalist Gavin Haynes, writing about the US government's use of auditory torture tactics, the fact that music is so psychologically powerful means that, like a loaded gun, it can just as easily be turned to evil. Let's conclude our coverage of last year's popular music and talk about the times America's favorite artists turned their metaphorical loaded guns to good, shooting us all, in our heads and our hearts, with bullets of genius, joy, and insight. Without further ado, let's get into the top 10 hit songs of 2023. Politically.
God made the world 7 short days. Said it was good. I bet it was great.
Avant-Garde Tier. This is for the songs that break the mold, not just having a solid political message, but also connecting on a deeper, emotional level. Starting with number 10, Handle on You, Parker McCollum. To put it in the most generous terms, 2023 was an absolutely terrible year for Mitch McConnell. Not only did he boast the lowest approval and highest disapproval rating of any senator, with as little as 6% of voters thinking he did a good job, even his fellow Republicans in deep red Tennessee and his home state of Kentucky hate him.
Madam Chairman.
Everywhere he goes, he is met with boos and jeers, despite having done nothing wrong, aside from everything he's ever done. The psychological damage from being hated by over 100 million Americans coincided with physical damage, including multiple falls, surgeries, and unexplained bruising. Wishing he could just retreat into his shell, which was looking for any escape from the constant torment. Once he decided to step down from party leadership and not run for re-election in 2026, he finally found some comfort at the bottom of a bottle. And, as it always does, alcohol solved all of his problems and everything was totally fine.
Okay.
Number 9. Just Wanna Rock. Lil Uzi Vert. Just Wanna Rock outlines the Chinese government's plans to strong-arm Vietnam, the Philippines, and other nations in Southeast Asia into ceding control of the Spratly and Paracel Islands in the South China Sea, a vitally important area which sees trillions of dollars of goods sail through it annually. Here, Uzi reveals the Chinese government's approach, to claim and develop small coral reefs, turning what were once barely rocks into massive military bases, and using those to stake a claim to most of the 1.3 million square mile body of water. While the Chinese government attempts to downplay their intentions as just wanting a rock, they actually have very extreme ambitions. As you can see here, they, with 1, 2, 3, 4, throw up the 5, created a 9-dash line that contains about 80% of the whole sea, stretching well into the exclusive economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, Brunei, and Indonesia. And they have a message for these countries if they dare to object. By flexing their much larger economic power, China makes a not-so-veiled threat to the smaller countries of Southeast Asia, a classic shake-it-down-down tactic. And of course, the threats are not just economic. Uzi here calls on MC, a shortening of CMC, the Central Military Commission, to make another hit, that is, to escalate militarily, as has happened before with the 1988 Johnson South Reef skirmish and the 2014 Haiyangshi U-981 standoff. Uzi makes the stakes of such escalation clear, as threat transitions to admonition, transitions to the terrifying sounds of an all-out war. Number 8. Sure thing, Miguel. I take my job here seriously, and I do believe I've been objective with my rankings thus far. Still, I'm but a man, and I cannot deny this song placed as high as it does in part for personal reasons. See, though I have found my fame and fortune in pioneering the field of audio politics, there's still a special place in my heart for my first love, decision theory. As such, this song's subject matter, the sure thing principle, a theorem in Judea-Pearl's do calculus regime of causal notation that states if you do something regardless of another thing, you should do that thing without regarding the other thing. You know, it really hits home. Number 7. Escapism. Bray featuring 070 Shake.
A little context if you care to listen. I find myself in a shit position.
In Escapism, Ray is in a horrible, ugly, terrible, unworthy state.
Anything please. Have mercy on me. Take this pain away. You're asking me my symptoms, doctor. I don't want to feel.
She is so tortured by her condition that she cannot bring herself to even discuss the details. 070 Shake's verse at the tail end of the song reveals the numbness and detachment caused by being in such an unavoidable, inhumane position. Looking at the identity of the feature, and at Ray's personal story, we can identify the harrowing, nearly unspeakable plight that she has been subjected to. Being British. Before performing at Joe Biden's inauguration, pop megastar, blockbuster actress, and amateur sleuth Lady Gaga began an investigation into the January 6th insurrection and its instigators.
And I went back to that woman that asked me, and I said, my apologies, I'd like to see the Capitol. And then I walked through the Capitol like a detective, and I looked for evidence.
This is what she found. Number 6. Bloody Mary, Lady Gaga. After 2 long years of research, Gaga pieced it all together, and now there's one person in her crosshairs. Illinois' Mary Miller. Why is Lady Gaga going to kill Representative Miller? What exactly are these things she does? Mary's quite the enigma. On one hand, she praised the repeal of Roe v. Wade for some of its pro-life effects.
President Trump, on behalf of all the MAGA patriots in America, I want to thank you for the historic victory for life in the Supreme Court yesterday.
But on the other hand, she quoted Hitler, who famously ended quite a few white lives.
This is the battle. Hitler was right on one thing. He said, whoever has the youth has the future. Our children are being propagandized.
More ideological clarity can be found in her broadly pro-evil stances on other issues, with her voting against Ukraine aid, against Sweden and Finland joining NATO, against counter-terrorism efforts in North and West Africa, against condemning the coup in Myanmar, and dismissing the deaths of thousands of children in Gaza. Clearly, Gaga believes that this conduct amounts to treason under Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution, thus subjecting Mary to the death penalty for giving aid or comfort to the enemies of the U.S. However, the clause states that no person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act, or on confession in open court, and, as we know, Lady Gaga is the only one that looked for evidence.
I looked for evidence.
Thus, she has no other option except to take justice into her own hands and personally execute the Congresswoman. Number 5. Put It On the Floor Again, Lotto, featuring Cardi B. Congressional leaders are hardly leaders, Lotto argues. They barely passed any legislation last year, making it the least productive session in modern history. Legislative activists like Lotto and Cardi B are trying to address this issue. But despite intense fundraising efforts and lobbying, they are unable to get their legislation to a floor vote. Countless bills die in committee or because partisan leaders refuse to put legislation up to a vote under the Hastert rule, an informal custom that prevents popular legislation from passing in order to protect majority party legislators from having controversial opinions on the record. But this song would not be so high if it simply whined about Congress being slow, partisan, and useless.
I hate to bring you bad news.
Instead, Lotto and Cardi provide a more optimistic perspective on the capacity of government to effect real, positive change.
Laugh it to the pain, but shit is not a joke.
The federal government has vast resources that could be turned towards a huge number of serious policy initiatives, like lowering the cost of pharmaceuticals,
She must ain't took a mess. It costs an arm and leg.
and improving on mental health issues.
Say she got a problem. Imaginary smoke.
Too often, policy initiatives are framed in opposition to one another. Do we fund Ukraine or defend our border? Do we address gun violence or improve mental health? Do we give foreign aid or support the domestic poor? But Lotto makes an interesting point that in a wealthy country like ours, we can pursue an all-of-the-above strategy.
Cheap niggas make you pee. Rich niggas get you both.
And, of course, there are issues we can address without large investments.
Only thing a nigga get from me for free is free to bros.
Like reducing mass incarceration. These points about the transformative power of big government, while commendable, probably ring a little hollow. After all, these policies have failed time and time again, whether due to partisanship or public sentiment, a hard truth made, if anything, more disheartening by the fact that we do have the ability to solve the issues at hand. Where Put It On the Floor Again truly excelled is in its answer to this concern. To not give up.
Bitches set it up, then put it on the floor.
Don't believe the law will pass?
Put it on the floor.
And see if it can. And if it doesn't,
Put it on the floor again, bitch.
until it does. Number 4, Tomorrow 2, Glorilla and Cardi B. I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King. The Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln. Tomorrow 2, Glorilla and Cardi B. These are the words our children, and their children, will be inspired by for generations. In seeking to carry us forward, Tomorrow 2, ironically, looks to the past. Steeped in the tradition of American oral history, Glo and Cardi masterfully interpolate several direct quotations from various famous orators. Ronald Reagan, waiting for all those tax cuts to trickle down after skyrocketing the national debt.
Ain't fucked up by no credit score. I might be rich as fuck tomorrow.
Richard Nixon, warning his inner circle in the early stages of the Watergate scandal.
Bitch, I still got cases open. Keep your mouth shut tomorrow.
Andrew Jackson, in response to the various attempts on his life.
Throwing shots, that's how I know I got a trigger.
James A. Garfield, explaining why he could not appoint Charles Guiteau to the Paris consulship.
I can put you in my business. You might wish me dead tomorrow.
George Washington, on his decision to break with the fashion norms of the time and not wear a powdered wig.
Long ass sleep, it be tickling my ass crack.
Calvin Coolidge, upon hearing of his son's tragic death at age 16. William Henry Harrison, justifying his decision to die a month into his presidency.
Soon as I feel like my time get wasted, then it's time to go.
Andrew Jackson, in response to the various attempts on his life.
They say they don't fuck with me, but I say they can't fuck with me.
Franklin D. Roosevelt, speaking of industry leaders after hearing Smedley Butler's testimony.
I don't wanna hang with them, they don't have no business.
JFK, during the 1960 election.
I thought for my bitches and I'm fighting over dick too.
Andrew Jackson, in response to the various attempts on his life.
She said she my eye, but I don't know her, had to look her up.
Jimmy Carter, publicizing his charity work with Habitat for Humanity.
I stay on her mind, I got condos in that bitch head.
Andrew Jackson, in response to the various attempts on his life.
Me, I'm kinda ratchet still, so I'm the type to be some.
Donald Trump, after one of his lawyers got convicted in Georgia in relation to his fake electors scheme.
Cheese. His name is Cheese.
They say they don't fuck with me, but I say they can't fuck with me.
Andrew Jackson, in response to the various attempts on his life.
I've been on these bitches' necks so long, sometime I fucking stuck.
And finally, Glorilla adds her own words to this canon of American history one-liners that we all know and love, capturing the American spirit of optimistic resilience in no more than a dozen words.
Every day the sun won't shine, but that's why I love the Mars.
Yeah, that damn near brings a tear to my eye. Music isn't just shared through the record store or the radio. Often, the silver screen can take a song to the next level, spreading its political message harder, better, faster, and stronger. Last year there was one movie, and one soundtrack, both deeply political, that took the country by storm. Number 3. Search and Rescue. Drake. Accompanying the smash hit blockbuster The Sound of Freedom, Search and Rescue sees Drake step into the shoes of a child, being trafficked by pedophile elites. Drake, with his flat, emotionless delivery, masterfully capturing the unspeakable torture his character has experienced, hopelessly calls out for rescue from the illicit clubs frequented by members of these deep state pedophile rings. In order to be freed from this grisly industry, the child Drake is playing begs for someone like the movie's protagonist, American hero and serial sex predator Tim Ballard, to let him hear that sweet sound of freedom. But Drake's performance here has more layers, fully delving into the tragic effects of such treatment on a child's psyche. In the darkest times, Drake's character calls out to his mommy, wishing he could escape and experience the childhood that was so heart-wrenchingly robbed from him. Drake's characterization gets even more complex. The child he is playing not only seeks his own mother, but the guidance that a parental figure can give.
I need someone to be patient with me. I need you, yeah, I really do. Tell me what to do. Okay. Tell me what to do. Okay. Tell me what to do.
Drake's urgent repetition of the phrase, "Tell me what to do," truly devastating as an abused child's conception of the role of a parent, revealed how his character's trauma has led him to have little idea of what freedom even could be. Tragically, millions of children are forced into such a horrible fate. Once again, I just want to take the time to emphasize how brilliant this is. It is hard to imagine how Drake could have executed such a deep and touching performance of the child's character. Almost as if he is reaching to his own personal experiences, being around youth in similar situations.
The Adams County Sheriff Department, you can get these. There are no kidnapping victims in my CDs.
Supreme Tier. This is it, folks, the best of the best, the creme de la creme, the head of the honcho. These are the songs that make their way out of Spotify playlists and into history books. Not only capturing a moment, but making one. Number 2. Anti-Hero. Taylor Swift. Anti-Hero is nothing short of a total deconstruction of our once and future king Donald John Trump. As such, I think it would be a disservice to do anything else other than a line-by-line deconstruction of the whole piece. Taylor Swift, herself the Donald Trump of the music industry, seems to have a unique insight into the former president's mental state and insecurities. Worrying about his advancing age and obvious cognitive decline. These concerns are affecting his sleep schedule, leading him to post on social media at odd hours of the night. He can't help but think about all the connections he once had with people who now loathe him. Former advisors, former cabinet members, current wives.
I should not be left to my own devices. They come with prices and vices.
Donald recognizes that unless he is stopped, he will continue to grift his supporters.
I end up in crisis.
And eventually bring himself and the country to financial ruin.
I wake up screaming from dreaming.
But it's not the money that gets to him. At least not really.
One day I'll watch as you're leaving, 'cause you got tired of my scheming for the last time.
It's the idea, the eventuality even, that his loyal base of supporters will abandon him, out of hate, or more likely, out of boredom, once the next personable golden-haired cash cow comes along. Trump has the self-awareness to realize that he sucks.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. At tea time, everybody agrees.
He takes a momentary departure from this line of thinking to reference his poor eclipse-watching habits.
I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. It must be exhausting, always rooting for the anti-hero.
Before recognizing how taxing it must be for so many people to stand by every move of such a strange, grotesque character as himself. In the next verse, Swift digs deeper into exactly what sort of person Trump is.
Sometimes I feel like everybody is a sexy baby.
This line has received quite a bit of attention and speculation as to what exactly it means, but I think the reading here is pretty clear. This is a very straightforward reference to how Donald Trump is sexually attracted to his female children, both of whom he first met when they were babies. You know, his babies.
She's really a beautiful baby, and she's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet, but time will tell.
Capitol Hill, on January 6th. He's worried about his weight and low energy on the campaign trail, and continuing to exaggerate the recent attempts on his life.
Did you hear my covert narcissism, like disguise as altruism?
And most damningly, he seems to believe that his narcissism is covert. Yet there is once again a hint of self-awareness here, with the man reaching the sober thought
Like some kind of consciousness.
that he is no better than Ted Cruz.
I wake up screaming from dreaming. One day I'll watch as you're leaving, and life will lose all its meaning for the last time.
Cutting through the easy comparisons and late-night show jabs, Taylor here gets to the core of the human tragedy that is Donald Trump. The man has become a caricature of himself, a husk of a man with an overlong tie, propped up by the cheers of the dwindling crowds before him as he lectures Lecter from the lectern. Still, he cannot help but see that his critics are justified.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. At tea time, everybody agrees. I stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. It must be exhausting, always rooting for the anti-hero.
Donald Trump is not the villain of our story. He's the anti-hero. Despite his innumerable flaws and obvious ineptitude, he marches on and triumphs, time and time again. In the bridge, Taylor makes an attempt to humanize him.
I have this dream, my daughter-in-law kills me for the money.
After all, he, like all of us, fears being killed by Kimberly Guilfoyle.
She thinks I left them in the will. The family gathers around and reads it, and then someone screams out, she's
laughing up at us from hell.
Despite the millions of fanatics that revere him, and the millions more who see him as a force of change, Trump is most closely surrounded by status quo fat cats and power-hungry vultures who are hardly waiting for his death to get their share of the flesh. And it's all his fault.
It's me. I am the problem. It's me. It's me. Never in the mirror. It must be exhausting, always rooting for the anti-hero.
We have seen so far several songs that have made truly wonderful statements, but there is one above them that reigns supreme. Something special. Something timeless. Something glorious. Number 1. Something in the Orange. Zach Bryan. Imagine being on the wrong side of history. McCain in 2009. Gorbachev after the fall of the Soviet Union. Wilhelm II post-World War I. These are the stories we don't often hear. History is written by the victors. But art is made by losers. A pinnacle of audio-political excellence. Something in the Orange lets us, like a hookworm, crawl into the skin of a 17th century English peasant.
It'll be fine by dusk cloud, I'm telling you, baby.
These things eat at your bones and drive your young mind crazy.
Zach here plays a young man due to the life expectancy at the time, coming to terms with new reality after his bedrock beliefs have been shattered.
But I miss you in the mornings when I see the sun. Something in the orange tells me we're not done.
After William of Orange landed in England, overthrowing King James II in what would come to be known as the Glorious Revolution, the outgoing king's loyal supporters, mostly Catholics, held on to hope that their leader or his heirs would one day return. They resented that William, a foreign magistrate from the Netherlands, was suddenly in charge of the British Isles.
There's orange dancing in your eyes from bulb light,
flaunting his wooden shoes and tulip bulbs. The unnamed narrator, presumably a Catholic, is also concerned about the effects of new leadership on religion.
And I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't.
With William's Calvinism espousing the doctrine of predestination, the narrator worries that he will be forced to convert, potentially leading to certain damnation. In fact, religion is at the core of the emotional stakes here.
To you I'm just a man, to me you're all I am.
Following the Stuart conception of the monarchy developed decades prior, James II was not just the guy in charge. He had ascended to the throne by divine right, and was himself a god on 2 feet. To see James II up and leave to France was tantamount to seeing God abandon his post as the overseer of all that is good and holy, and leave to France.
Where the hell am I supposed to go?
As a mere peasant, the narrator does not have such options, and will have to live with the consequences of James' failure. Part of what makes this song such a masterclass on the form is that it immerses itself in the era, incorporating elements of everyday life at the time without losing its focus.
I poison myself again.
Amidst all the political chaos, the narrator contracts syphilis and takes mercury, the common treatment at the time. This reinforces the growing resentment at a wealthy leader who abandoned the common Englishman for a French palace, leaving Britain at the mercy of Orange Willie.
Something in the orange tells me you're never coming home.
Eventually, the narrator has lost all hope that his sovereign will ever return.
If you leave today, I'll just stare at the way the orange touches all things around.
As his country is irreparably transformed by the Dutch touch. As James leaves from Rochester, the narrator's bitterness burns, brighter and brighter.
The grass, trees, and dew, how I just hate you.
Matched in luminosity only by the lamps on the ship that he desperately hopes will return.
Please turn those headlights around. Please turn those headlights around.
But he knows they won't. There we have it. The 100 most popular songs of 2023, ranked, politically. So what does all this mean? What is the secret message hidden among this incredibly diverse set of political treatises? We can clearly see some trends. The focus on Georgia and on the color orange. Is this something to do with peaches? No, that can't be it. Really, I'm at a loss here. There must be something in our favorite songs that helps us to see the truth. But I just can't seem to figure it out. Maybe it's all just noise. Wait! Favorite song? Tootsie? That's it, that's the key. I knew there was something missing with my analysis. Masculinity isn't real. Let's take a second look.
I'm on the stage right now, singing your favorite song. Look in the crowd, even nowhere to be found as they sing along.
Tootsie is in charge. He's on the stage. You're not. In fact, you're not even in the crowd. You're not allowed to be. It's a club, and, buddy, you ain't a part of it. It's what they've been telling us all along. It's why they hide their political messages behind genius analogy and savvy metaphor. This is not for you to understand. It is for them. The elites, the oligarchs, those to whom we are not even a face among the crowd. Thankfully, in 2023, one brave soul warned us.
And now that I have cracked the code, we can rise up and save America before the rich and famous turn us into a dictatorship of the... Oh, damn it.
Y'all stay politically correct. This shit's hilarious.